When most Americans picture Canada, they imagine a colder version of home. Polite people, hockey, maple syrup, and endless snow. But the truth is far more fascinating. Because the moment you cross that border, something subtle begins to happen. The world around you feels familiar, yet slightly off, like walking through a mirror image of the United States. The traffic flows differently. People walk at a slower pace. Conversations sound calmer, softer, almost too kind to be real. You feel it most when you interact with strangers. The cashier who smiles and asks how your day's going. The driver who waves you across the street. The person who thanks the bus driver as they step off. It's not scripted kindness. It's instinct. And for many Americans, it's almost unsettling at first. Canada doesn't just look different. It behaves differently. And it doesn't take long before you realize that every small, quiet habit here tells a bigger story about who Canadians are and what they value. Americans often joke about Canadian politeness, but until you experience it firsthand, you can't understand how deep it runs. Here, sorry isn't just a word, it's a reflex, a built-in emotional language. You'll hear it when someone steps on your shoe, when they interrupt you by accident, and even when they have nothing to apologize for. It's not about guilt, it's about harmony. Canadians use politeness the way others use small talk, as a way to connect and maintain balance in every interaction. Even in moments of frustration, their tone stays measured, their words gentle. Road rage is rare, and public arguments feel almost taboo. To Americans used to more direct communication, it can feel like emotional theater. But it's not an act, it's culture. From childhood, Canadians are taught to think about how their actions affect others. That's why they hold doors longer, line up patiently, and thank the bus driver as if it's the most natural thing in the world. And maybe that's the secret. In Canada, kindness isn't weakness, it's a quiet strength. One of the first things Americans notice after arriving in Canada is how peaceful public life feels. It's not silent, just balanced. In cities like Toronto or Vancouver, there's movement everywhere, but the noise feels controlled, almost mindful. You can sit in a crowded cafe and still hear yourself think. You can ride the subway without hearing someone yell into their phone. Canadians seem to have an unspoken rule. Everyone deserves their own space. For an American used to chatter and energy, it's jarring at first, even lonely. But give it time, and you start to appreciate the calm. You begin to notice how people listen when others speak, how lines move smoothly without cutting, how even crowded streets have rhythm instead of chaos. The quiet doesn't mean people aren't friendly. It means they respect peace. In Canada, social restraint isn't a lack of confidence. It's a form of respect. It's the idea that sharing a space with others is a privilege, not a competition. And then, of course, there's the weather, the invisible force that shapes everything. In Canada, the cold isn't just climate, it's culture. It's what bonds people together, what fuels jokes, traditions, and survival instincts. Winter here is not a season you endure, it's one you prepare for. From the moment the leaves fall, you'll see snow shovels lined up outside stores, salt trucks humming through neighborhoods, and every Canadian sharing the same ritual, layering up and getting on with life. Americans from warmer regions can't quite believe it at first. Kids walking to school in -20 degrees. People jogging while the streets sparkle with frost. Drivers calmly plugging in block heaters so their cars don't freeze overnight. But for Canadians, it's just life. They laugh through it, help strangers stuck in the snow, and celebrate when spring finally returns. The weather has a way of humbling everyone here, reminding you that nature always wins. And maybe that's why Canadians are so grounded. Because every winter teaches them patience, resilience, and gratitude for the small comforts that make the cold bearable. When it comes to money, Canada quietly rewrites the social rules that most Americans take for granted. In the US, tipping is practically a ritual. 20% feels automatic, and anything less seems disrespectful. But in Canada, it's more relaxed. People still tip generously, but not with the same pressure or guilt attached. It's understood as appreciation, not obligation. You won't find servers chasing you down for loose change, and no one will glare at you for forgetting $1. Canadians believe respect isn't measured in percentages. It's shown in how you treat people. And that attitude carries into everyday spending, too. There's a certain humility around money here. Flashy displays of wealth don't impress people the way they might in Los Angeles or Miami. Canadians lean towards subtlety, practical cars, modest homes, and quiet comfort over luxury. They talk openly about saving, budgeting, and taxes because financial transparency isn't taboo, it's responsibility. And for Americans used to equating success with image, That mindset can feel strange, even refreshing. In Canada, you don't prove your worth with what you buy, but with how grounded you stay. If there's one invisible difference that defines Canada, it's the collective spirit. It's something you can't quite see, but you feel it everywhere. Whether it's strangers helping push a car out of the snow, neighbors shoveling each other's driveways, or entire towns coming together after a storm, there's a deep sense that life works best when people look out for one another. This isn't government policy, it's culture. Canadians grow up understanding that small acts of cooperation build trust. Even in big cities, you'll notice it. The calm way people let others merge on highways, the patient drivers who wave you through instead of honking. It's the same spirit that shapes their healthcare system, a belief that everyone deserves basic dignity, even if it costs a bit more time or money. To Americans raised on individualism and personal hustle, it can seem idealistic. But in Canada, collective responsibility isn't about losing freedom, it's about sharing it. It's a quiet kind of strength, the kind that keeps a community warm even through the longest winters. The longer Americans live in Canada, the more these small, strange habits begin to change them in ways they never expected. At first, it's subtle. You apologize without thinking. You say thank you to people you barely know, and you stop assuming kindness always has an agenda. Then over time, it becomes who you are. You start waiting your turn in silence instead of fighting for space. You hold doors longer. You smile at strangers without fear of judgment. In Canada, respect isn't earned through dominance. It's shared through decency. And slowly, you realize that the things you once thought were strange are actually what make life here so peaceful. Canada doesn't demand you change. It quietly inspires you to. It makes you see the beauty in patience, the strength in community, and the rare comfort of knowing that most people around you are just trying to be kind. For many Americans, that realization is life-changing. Not because Canada is perfect, but because it reminds you what normal could feel like. And maybe that's the most fascinating part. You come here expecting snow, hockey, and maple syrup, but you leave with something far more meaningful: perspective. Because when you return home, everything feels louder, faster, sharper. You start noticing how rare calmness is, how valuable politeness can be, and how small habits shape entire cultures. So the next time someone asks you what makes Canada so different, you might just smile and say, "It's not the country that changes you, it's the kindness that does." But that raises a question. If these quiet, everyday habits can transform the way people live and treat each other, what would happen if more countries adopted them too? In the next Global Encounter, we'll explore that idea and uncover what the rest of the world can learn from Canada's calm.